Well, welcome. Welcome to our Bible study. It's good to be here with you to learn a little bit about Jesus. Well, today we're going to do one of Jesus' greatest miracles. Jesus is going to walk on the water. He's also going to calm the wind, which is really interesting. So actually we're going to do two miracles today. And there's a third miracle, but we'll talk about that later. Let me ask you this question. How often do you pray? You pray more than once a day, and a lot of people pray morning and evening. You pray about once a day, you say. Say, in truth, I don't pray as much as I should. Maybe I pray once a week or so. Maybe somebody else would say, I only pray once in a while. When things are really bad, then I pray. But that's only once in a while, maybe a couple times a year when things are really, really difficult. Or maybe some of you are going to say, I never pray. And maybe another one of you is going to say, I let others like pastors or priests or friends pray for me. I don't pray for myself. Well, let me encourage you. I really hope and encourage you to pray every day. Pray twice a day. I know so many people that pray morning and evening. Prayer is a great, great gift that we have as Christians. As believers in Jesus, we have the right to go right into the throne room of the Father, to sit on his lap, call him Daddy, tell him what's been going on in our life, praise him, thank him, and ask him for things. So I really encourage you. The reason I talk about prayer today is Jesus is going to pray. And I guess the comment is, if Jesus prayed, we sure should pray. All right, let me ask you this question. What is something that you are very afraid of? What's something you say, I don't like snakes. Somebody else says, spiders, I don't like spiders. Or me, it's heights. And I can go up in an airplane, even a small airplane, no problem. I could go on a roof. I could shingle a roof. I did that, but in certain situations, like, there was this time that Linda and our son and I were in Italy. We're at the Sistine Chapel. And we had climbed all the way up with this great throng of people. And we're up there, and there's this balcony, and it must be 30 or 50 feet down. And I'm looking over the balcony, and I just couldn't stand it. I had to back off, get against the back wall. And I said, listen, you guys look, and you can watch the art up here and do this. I got to move ahead in this line. I got to get out of here. I can't stand to be here because I'm too afraid of heights. Well, the reason I even mentioned being afraid, it turns out that Jesus's disciples today are afraid, and Jesus chides them for being afraid, because one of the basic things about Christianity, as a Christian, we don't have to be afraid. Well, here's the background. Jesus had just fed thousands of people with 5 dinner rolls and a couple of sardines. And the crowd was so impressed with this and Jesus' miracles and so forth that they wanted to make Jesus king. Now, how do we know this? The crowd wanting to make Jesus king does not occur in the Gospel of Mark. It does occur in the Gospel of John, so that's how we know. And it gives us important insight into today's passage. But why would the crowd want to make Jesus their king? Well, first of all, Jesus had the power to feed them. He had just fed them. They were all satisfied. And they said, it's good. We'll have this guy as king. We'll be able to eat all the time. And most of them went to bed hungry from time to time. They were very poor people. Furthermore, Jesus claimed to be the Messiah. It just seemed natural that the Messiah should be their king. Furthermore, Jesus could do miracles. He had all this power. He could cast out demons. And they said, well, I'll have a king that's very powerful. And furthermore, they hoped that Jesus would become their king and kick out the Romans. Remember, during this time, Israel was occupied by the Roman Empire. And the Romans had soldiers around, and they were excising taxes out of Israel. And they wanted the Romans out. They hated the Romans occupying their land. And that's what they hoped. They figured, Jesus, you're powerful enough to do it. Maybe you'll be the one that'll lead us in a revolt against Rome. And Jesus would have nothing to do with it. Jesus didn't come the first time to be a king. He came to teach us, to go to the cross, to die, to pay the penalty for your sins and for my sins. and to establish his church. And he will come again, and this time he's going to be the king. This time he's going to come to judge. But the first time he came, that's not why he came. So he said, no, you're not going to make me king. All right, let's get into the scripture. Mark 6:45. And immediately Jesus had his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, to Bethsaida, where he himself dismissed, while he himself dismissed the crowd. See, Jesus gave his disciples an order. You get in the boat and you go ahead of me. So Jesus had his disciples leave in the boat without him. And I want you to notice, they obeyed Jesus. Whatever Jesus says, they may not have understood it, but they obeyed Jesus. We may not always understand what Jesus wants us to do, why he wants us to do something, but when he gives us a command, we need to do it. So why do you think Jesus made his disciples go without him? Why do you think? For time alone to pray? Yes, that's one reason, that's for sure. And that's what Jesus is going to do in a little bit in this passage. To separate them from the crowd. Jesus wanted to separate them from the crowd because he didn't want them to be tempted to make him king. He didn't want them to jump on that bandwagon. He wanted to separate them from the crowd so they wouldn't jump on that make Jesus king bandwagon. And also, he wanted to set them up for a miracle and also for some learning, as we're going to find out. But he wanted to set them up for a miracle, the great miracle he was going to walk on water, which was to come. Also, he wanted to teach them to trust him. It's very important to Jesus that we trust him, to not be afraid and to trust him. Mark 6:46. And after saying goodbye to them, to the disciples, I assume, and maybe to the disciples and to the people, or to the crowd, he left for the mountain to pray. So he went up in the mountain to pray. So, why do you think Jesus prayed? Why did Jesus pray? Well, maybe he was tired and needed a shot of energy. Remember, Jesus is God and man. He's fully God and fully man. And in his humanity, he got tired. And maybe he was just tired and he needed a shot of energy. It's a good thing to do. Climb up on the Father's lap and pray. Praise the Father. Pray to the Father, ask him for things, and it'll give you a shot of energy. So maybe Jesus just needed a shot of energy because he was tired. And maybe it was because he was facing many difficulties. What kind of difficulties was Jesus facing? Well, his disciples weren't always getting it. He had to teach them the same lessons over and over again. The crowd had just tried to make him king, and he didn't want to be king. That's not why he came this time, so he had to figure out a way around that. The Jewish leadership was wanting to kill Jesus, and the Jewish leadership wasn't believing, even though the evidence was there. And so he had some difficulties, and he was facing these difficulties, and he wanted to pray about them. And maybe he wanted to focus on his next phase of ministry, and whatever the next thing he was going to do. Maybe he needed to get some clarity in that, and maybe that's why he prayed. Or maybe he just liked spending time with his Father. Remember where Jesus came from? Jesus, before he came down and was born, Jesus was in heaven with the Father, in this intimate relationship. He was with the Father, an intimate relationship. And maybe he really missed that. I know that he longed to go back at the end of his life. He says something along those lines. But maybe he just wanted to pray so he could be close to his Father again. What do you think he prayed about? Let's see. What do you think? Maybe think he praised the Father. God, you're glorious. Yeah, maybe he praised the Father. Maybe he asked for his friends, Father, I love these guys, but they're just not getting it. Can they please get it? Can you please help them to get it? Maybe he asked for guidance. We're going to be going over here, and these are the kind of things we're going to do. I wonder exactly how we should do it. What kind of things should I talk about in the synagogues? Maybe ask for strength. The cross isn't that far away, Father. Please give me strength because I know that I have to endure it. Maybe he thanked the Father. Father, thank you. Thank you for this and thank you for that. It's a good list. This is a good list of things. If you don't know what to pray for, here's your list right there. Or maybe what he was doing was asking that people believe. Say, Father, I'm glad that they want to make me king, but what I really want them to do is to believe that I'm the Messiah, God's Son and God, so I can spend eternity with him in heaven. It's a great list. You can pray for that list. And if you don't know what else to pray for, pick that list. And the 4 prayers at the end. And if you just pray for those things every day, that'd be good. Mark 6:47. When it was evening, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. So first of all, I want you to know, what time is it? Well, it's evening. I don't know, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock. Maybe by that time, but 8 o'clock might have been getting dark there in the spring in Palestine. But probably about 6 or 7 o'clock. This becomes important because the next verse, they're going to jump to the following morning, but it's not evident unless you take pause and you look to make sure you understand. Between this verse and the next verse, there's about 6 or 7 hours. So it's about 6 p.m. It's evening, and the boat was in the middle of the lake. So the boat had some time, and they were on their way, and they had gone out, and they had put some distance between Jesus and where Jesus was and where the boat was. Mark 6:8. Seeing them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them, at about the 4th watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea, and he intended to pass them by. So, seeing them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them, he came to them walking on the sea. So it is now between 3 and 6 a.m. That's when the 4th watch is. So between the past evening, and the 3 to 6, what was Jesus doing? Well, he was praying. But the disciples were in trouble because he saw them straining at the oars. And how did he see them? He's there on land. He sees them straining out there. They're a couple miles away. Do you think in a storm, and there's a storm, do you think in a storm you can see 2 miles? Maybe you could see a boat, a little tiny thing, but you couldn't tell whether somebody was straining at the oars or not 2 miles away. So see, this is kind of another miracle. Jesus saw what was going on. And Jesus prayed all night, from 6 o'clock or whatever time the evening is to the 4th watch, and that was 3 to 6 a.m. And Jesus walked on the water. Here in Minnesota, we walk on water all the time, but that's only in the wintertime when it's frozen. Pretty hard to walk on water, but Jesus had power over nature, and he walked on the water. So it said that Jesus intended to pass them by. Why do you think he intended to pass them by? Well, maybe he was in a hurry, had to get to Capernaum, had an appointment at a synagogue the next day. I don't think that's true. Well, maybe he saw that they were okay. They're okay. I'll just leave them here. They'll get back by themselves. I don't think so either. Maybe he wanted them to ask. I think that's kind of good. He wanted them to ask them for help, ask him for help. Maybe he did it to test them. I think this was a test, and I think he wanted this to be a learning experience, and he wanted to emphasize that. And Jesus wants us to learn from all our experiences, even our failures. You see, Jesus wants us to, first of all, recognize who he is. He wanted the disciples, as he was going by, to recognize who he was. He wanted them to know that he was close by. Jesus wants you to know that he's close by. Jesus wanted them to ask for help, and Jesus wants you to ask him for help. And Jesus wants you to trust him. And he wanted the disciples to trust him. recognize who he is, know that he's close by, ask him for help, and to trust him. That's what Jesus wants. Mark 6:49. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought that it was a ghost, and they cried out. Let me ask you true. We can condemn them for crying out and being afraid. Would you be afraid? Would you really be afraid if you were in a storm in a little boat at night and you saw something walking on the water? Would you be afraid? I think I would be afraid. I might be, pretty strong, but I don't know about that. So why were the disciples afraid? Well, they were afraid because it was dark and it was late at night and they were in a bad storm and they thought they saw a ghost and they were tired. They've been up all night rowing against the wind and they can't make any headway. And they were alone. They were without Jesus. That's why they were afraid. So tell me true, if you were in the boat, what would you have done? Maybe you would have had an anxiety attack. Maybe you would have had an anxiety attack. Or maybe you would have curled up in a ball and closed your eyes and just hoped that it went away. Maybe. Or maybe you wouldn't have believed your eyes. Let me rub my eyes. No, I really didn't see that. And every time you open it, hoping it went away. No, that can't be. Maybe that's what I would have done. Maybe you would have cried out for God's help, or cried out for Jesus. Jesus, where are you? Please help me. They had just left Jesus, but cried out for Jesus. I think maybe I would have cried out for Jesus. Or maybe you would have said, it's only Jesus. He walks on water all the time. Maybe he did. This is the only time that the Bible recounts that he was walking on water. But maybe he walked on water all the time. I don't know. Maybe he did that. Maybe he did that on a regular basis. Maybe he said, it's only Jesus. He walks on water all the time. I don't think that's true, but it could be true. They could have seen him do that again. Or maybe you would have jumped out in the boat and believing that he could walk on water too. And I don't know that I would have the faith to do that. Actually, that's what Peter did. Peter was in the boat, of course, and he jumped out and he walked on the water. Now, that's not recorded in the Gospel of John. It's recorded in the other Gospel. It's not recorded in the Gospel of Mark, but it is recorded in the other Gospels that Peter jumped out and he had a crisis of faith and he starts sinking and so forth. So, what would you have done? When you can't sleep tonight, it's an interesting thing. You get in a situation like that with Jesus, figure out what you would have done. So why do you think the disciples didn't recognize Jesus? Why didn't they recognize him? Well, it was dark. The waves and the spray were probably getting in the way, and the rain probably made visibility really bad. But I think the important one here is they weren't looking for Jesus. They really weren't looking for him. They didn't trust that it would be him, and they were really not looking for him. That's a big lesson for us. We should be looking for Jesus. Not only that, we're going to find out their hearts were hardened. We're going to talk about that a little bit, and what that might mean, and why their hearts might have been hardened. Mark 6:50. For they all saw him and were terrified, but immediately he spoke with them and said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." You can imagine this man on the ark. Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. So the disciples were what? They were terrified. And Jesus says, do not be afraid. Basic Christian concept, don't be afraid. So, how can Jesus tell you as a Christian, tell his disciples, not to be afraid? Why can he do that? Well, first of all, Jesus has our back. Jesus will get us through no matter what. Jesus is going to get you through. Hang on to him in difficult times. It's the worst thing that happens. You end up having cancer, you end up dying, and then what is Jesus going to do? He's going to take you and give you a resurrected body, bring you to heaven where you're going to be with Jesus and the Father forever. He's going to take care of you, and he will help you get through the difficult times of this life. He's going to get you through. Furthermore, Jesus can tell you don't be afraid because your sin is paid for. My sin is paid for. He paid for it on the cross. Furthermore, sin is forgiven. All you have to do is ask him, and your sin is forgiven. So you don't have to worry about sin. You don't have to be terrified of your sin. Furthermore, death is not the end. You don't have to be afraid. Death isn't the end. Our destiny as Christians is heaven with Jesus and the Father. So you don't have to be afraid. That's why Jesus can tell his followers not to be afraid. Mark 6:51. Then he, Jesus, got into the boat with them, and the wind stopped. And they were utterly astonished. I would have been astonished too. But they had seen him calm the sea before. This was the second time that he calmed the sea. But they were still absolutely astonished. You see, Jesus got into the boat, so he just stepped into the boat, I guess. I don't know. And the wind stopped. And so it was a double miracle. Not only was he walking on the water, he let them see that, he commanded the wind to stop, and the wind stopped. It's amazing. And they were astonished. Mark 6:52, last verse for today. For they, the disciples, had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. They had not gained what? Insight from the loaves miracle. Jesus taking 5 dinner rolls and a couple of sardines and feeding thousands of people. And their hearts were hardened. I want you to note this. This to me is a very important thing. Jesus got into the boat and helped them, helped the disciples, even though their hearts were hardened. And I think this is really, really, really good insight into Jesus. You know, even if your heart is a little bit hardened from time to time, Jesus will still help you. Say, Jesus, please help me change my hard heart to a soft heart, because Jesus wants us to have soft hearts. But Jesus got into the disciples' boat even though their hearts were hardened. So it says that they should have had some insights. Well, what insights should the disciples have had? Well, they should have the insight, no need to be afraid. That Jesus had their back. That Jesus is Lord over nature. They should have known that. He had calmed the sea, had multiplied the loaves, he changed the water into wine. They knew all those things. They knew that he was Lord over nature. But apparently they forgot that a little bit. Their heart got hardened. And they should have been looking for Jesus. They should have been looking for Jesus. They should have been asking for Jesus' help. And they should have realized that everything Jesus does has a purpose. And it was him that told them to go out into the water. So they were following Jesus' commands. They shouldn't have been so afraid. So, what is a hardened heart? So I'm going to give you some things. We'll kind of talk around the definition, and I think you'll kind of get it. I think you kind of have an idea of what it is already. See, the idea of a hardened heart has the idea of one who's choosing to ignore a truth. There's some truth that you're choosing to ignore. Maybe a friend of yours has cancer you refuse to accept. I'm not going to accept that he has cancer. And your heart gradually gets hardened. Or maybe you're sick and you're refusing to accept the fact that you're sick. Your heart is hardened against that. Hardening of a heart has to do with accepting that your sin is okay. You've done the sin so many times, you're tired of saying you're sorry, you're not going to be sorry, you have a right to do that sin, and God will harden your heart, and he'll stop making you feel remorse over that, and that's a really bad thing. That's a really bad thing. It has the idea of unbelief in light of evidence. There's all this evidence out there for something and you refuse to believe in it. It has the idea of being stubborn and unyielding, especially with regard to sin. It has the idea of refusing to believe. It has the idea of rejecting to the point of no return. If you continue to harden your heart against a certain sin, God will quit telling you to stop doing that. He'll take the remorse away. He'll just let you live in your sin. And that's a really, really bad thing. Don't let that happen to you. You don't want to have that happen to you. You don't want to have your heart hardened. In fact, what Jesus wants is soft hearts, not hard hearts. So how were the disciples' hearts hardened? Well, they had allowed fear to grip them. Furthermore, they were not looking for Jesus. They should have been looking for Jesus. Jesus has sent them out there. They should have been looking for him. They were not trusting in Jesus. Jesus had taken care of them all the way up until this point. They should have realized Jesus was going to take care of them. They had forgotten about the miracles, and they had temporarily lost their faith, and their hearts were hardened. Well, here's my summary. First of all, the crowd wanted to make Jesus king, and Jesus would have nothing to do with it. Jesus had prayed all night. If Jesus prayed, what do you think I'm going to say? Surely you can pray if Jesus prayed all night. You need to be praying. Pray every day. Please pray every day. Take advantage of that great, wonderful gift that God has given you to be able to climb up in the Father's lap and call him Daddy and pray. And Jesus promises that prayers will be answered. Part of the summary is Jesus has power over nature. In the passage today, he walked on water and he calmed the wind. No fear for Christians. Christianity's basic concept is that Christians don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid. Jesus will help us through, all the way through to heaven. Don't forget what Jesus has done. I think we do this all the time. This is one of the reasons why I really like us to go through the Gospels over and over again, because we find out the things that Jesus has done and we don't forget them. Don't forget the things Jesus has done, the great miracles that he's done, the great promises that he's made. Jesus has your back. Don't ever forget it. Jesus has your back. He's going to take care of you. Don't allow your heart to be hardened. Don't allow your motivation. The heart is the center of your motivation, is the center of your character. Don't let your character be hardened. Don't have a hardened heart. And if it is hardened, pray that God would help you soften it, and he'll help you do that. You see, Jesus wants us to recognize who he is and ask him for help. Well, if you've been watching these Bible studies, you know that I'm asking everybody to pray 4 prayers. Well, pretty soon it's only going to be 3 prayers because, the vaccine is out there. We're not going to have to be praying about this COVID thing. But for now, we're going to continue praying 4 prayers. First prayer, salvation for everyone around you. Everyone around me. Well, say you're a student. Pray for salvation for all the other students around you and for your teachers. That teacher the teacher likes you. The teacher likes you. Even pray for the teacher you think that doesn't like you. Maybe that's the one you should especially pray for. Pray for your families, your brothers and sisters, and your parents and kids and so forth. And if you're in a facility, pray for the nurses and the aides and the other staff and the other residents. Pray for the people that are around you. Pray for them by name if you can, every day. Pray for salvation for them. Pray for an end to racism in the United States. Racism is so evil. I can't even begin to tell you how evil it is. And it is in our society. It's in our nation. Pray for an end to it. It's also in the church. And the church should be no place for racism. There should be no place for racism in Jesus' church. Please pray against that every day. Pray for protection from the virus, for your facilities, whatever that might be, for your school, your classmates, for your family. Pray for protection. And hopefully that vaccine will get out really quick. And I know a lot of people that have already had it. And lastly, pray against this division that's in the United States. This is also permeated into the church. And there is division within the church, and that is bad. And division in the United States is also bad. Pray for an end to the division. Well, now, there's only one thing left to say. Say it with me. Aloha. See you there. God bless you all. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.